everyone. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Mindrise podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Fruman, psychotherapist, coach, author of Own Your Power, as well as founder at Mindrise. Today, we are going to be joined by a special guest, Jennifer Wielage. She is part of our Mindrise coaching team. Today's topic is all about overcoming perfectionism and silencing your inner critic. Jennifer is a life balance coach with our Mindrise coaching team. She's also a certified court reporter. She has always been ambitious and highly driven to succeed. She is one of those people that has prioritized work above all else, and for a while that worked until she became physically exhausted and had lots of emotional turmoil as a result of working way too hard. After being diagnosed with several health conditions, she made a shift to take her health into her own hands. And this led to implementing radical changes in all aspects of her life. I invite you to dive in and join me in this powerful conversation with Jennifer Wielage as we overcome perfectionism and learn how to silence our inner critic. So I'm really excited for us to be speaking about overcoming perfectionism today. And it's funny because when we were coming up with titles and themes of what we were going to talk about in the podcast, I had originally come up with escaping perfectionism. And as Jen and I were just jamming about this, like getting ready to drop into podcast mode, she said, well, what about overcoming perfectionism? So Jen, talk about like the difference between escaping and overcoming, because I think you made a really good point as to how powerful overcoming is.
Yeah, when I was first, thinking about the title, Escaping Perfectionism, I thought it was really cool. And then I started to think, though, when we escape something, it's more like we're running away from it or we're hiding from it. And I thought if we shined the light on perfectionism, if rather than hiding or running away from, if we were just more aware of what perfectionism looks like, is it something that we are struggling with? Rather than, if the answer is yes, rather than escaping it, maybe we should try overcoming it, try to, keep it in mind so that we understand like what this is and how we can rise above it rather than running away or escaping.
Right. Well, and those are some key words, that place of rise above. But I'm so excited for us to have Jen here with us today. Jen is one of our coaches at Mindrise. She is a complete and total rock star, and you guys are really going in for a treat for today because, in talking about overcoming perfectionism, Jen has such a great way about her that looks at not only the realities of life, but also the strengths that reside within us and how sometimes we get ourselves stuck in that place of perfectionism.
Yeah. And I just want to, before we, get into it really, Bailey, I really want to say just, you have been so influential and such an important person in my life. So I owe so much of who I am today to you. And I just wanted to thank you for being such a shining bright light in my life and the lives of so many other people. All the listeners that are listening are nodding their head in agreement with me right now. It's so true.
Thank you so much. But you and I are actually completely happenstance. And I think that this is one of the things about life that is so beautiful is when your paths are just meant to cross.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking about that too. I was like, okay, if it wasn't for the fact that we were both at Cardinal that day, sitting next to each other at that cafe in Asbury Park, and, you looked familiar to me. I guess we had met on a prior occasion, but I didn't remember where. And I asked you and you said, oh, I wrote a book recently. So I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's not where I know you from, but wow, what's your book called? And you were, oh, it's called Own Your Power. You were telling me all about it. And I was so excited that I went home and I actually ordered the book right away. And because I didn't even know this, unbeknownst to me, well, I guess I might have known this then, but we live a block away with the house number 609. So the book got delivered to your house instead of my house. So it's like the universe was conspiring to have us connect,
Right, but I didn't even know that it was actually my book. So I take the package and I'm like, oh, 609. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's the next block over. I literally walk the book around, deliver it to your house, and it happens to be my book. I walk your package, but it's my book.
Oh, you didn't know it was your book when you brought it to me?
No,
Oh,
I
that's so
your package.
That's even funnier. I didn't realize that. I thought you knew it was your book. I thought you might have opened it by accident or something and saw it. Okay.
No.
Well, anyway, it's so funny. And then from there, I started attending your life leadership retreats in Puerto Rico and then in Azores. And I just fell in love with all things Bailey. So now I get to work with you, and I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful.
I am grateful to have you in my world, but I think that this is a testament to when you are on your path, or life just has a path for you, it's about being able to put yourself in community with other people that are on that path, that are rising, that are elevating their life, that are asking themselves the questions that help them to grow, and our lives intersected. And I think that they're just like, we're in it for life now, Jen. We're in it for life. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So good.
And I'm so grateful. But one of the things I was actually thinking about as we were talking about this topic of perfectionism was, really defining perfectionism. Like, I think that it's essential that, because we can all see where it shows up in our life, but how do we define it? Because I think we can have individual definitions. I'm curious for you, how does perfectionism show up in your life? And when are you able to identify it? Do you see it when you get stuck on something? Do you see it when you start getting in your head?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, all of that for sure. I think it's just such a relevant topic, right? Perfectionism, because I think even just getting ready for the podcast, right? I'm just like, okay, how do I look? What am I going to say? Am I going to be appear to others to be, to sound good? It's like so much worry and so much stress about how we're going to appear to other people, right? It's so ironic that we're doing a podcast on perfectionism, and I'm worried about it. I'm like, how to overcome it? Yeah. I have to be my first client, right?
You make a great point, though. It's like we're getting ready to talk about something, and we start going down the rabbit hole of am I good enough? Am I okay? Do I know what I'm going to say? Do I know what I'm going to talk about? Well, I can't do this. If I'm not going to do it perfectly, then I probably shouldn't be doing it at all, right? Spiraling.
Yeah, and a perfectionist is somebody who really, I think, strives for and is not willing to accept anything less than flawless, as if there's such a thing, right? Flawless is, it's like an unattainable goal. And so my hope on hopping on here with you today is to hopefully help the listeners that you have, if they identify themselves as perfectionists, first of all, just, you're not alone, right? I think we all have a bit of perfectionism inside of us, right? It's very common. And it's also, I wanted to be here to also help people to see that perfection and flawless really does and can hold us back from having what we want, right? Because I don't identify myself as a perfectionist. I wouldn't say that I was a perfectionist. I don't label myself at that, but I know that I have so many tendencies towards that. I have so many qualities that, come up for me at times that I can say, okay, I am being a perfectionist in this situation. So I don't think necessarily you have to self-identify as a perfectionist, but I think you can also, have those tendencies when something comes up, when you go outside of your box or outside of your comfort zone, which is what I'm doing here today, because I've never been on a podcast. So this is my first time. So it is something that I think can come up when you have a situation, when you're faced with a situation that is a little challenging or is somewhat different, something that you don't do every day. So that's why I'm so excited to be talking about this, because we need to kick it to the curb. Perfectionism, right? Just
right. Well,
get rid of
exactly. We need to kick it to the curb, because I think that that's also part of the path of self-acceptance, right? Because I'm telling you, the only reason why I'm even talking about this topic is because I know this path very well. I can get myself stuck in perfectionism about work, about parenting, about exercise, about, relationships. Like I can get in such a trap of perfectionism for myself, but then holding this like almost unattainable expectation for myself, but then I can also do it to some others around me. And I don't mean to. It's just I know perfectionism so well because, and I think it's the intersection between when we step into self-acceptance, that's when I think that our perfectionism can fall away. But I also think that our perfectionism shows up and mine doubles down when I am in stress, uncertainty, inadequate in any capacity. And I think that in some ways, perfectionism will show up for me because it's almost like a way that I protect myself. Illusion, complete illusion, right? But like our trauma self or our past history, it all kind of bubbles to the surface and we don't want to get it wrong.
Right. We're so afraid to get it wrong.
Right.
And why are we put so much pressure on ourselves to get it right that we end up probably getting it wrong because we're so wrapped up in the whole head, our headspace is not productive. It's not being put on productive things like actually doing the thing. We're just so worried about doing it right.
Right. Which lends itself, Jen, to that place of overthinking. Right? Oh gosh, I am my own worst enemy when it comes to overthinking. Does that ever happen for you where it's like your brain has thought 10 steps down the road and at least 8 of them were detours and like we got a flat tire, like just like all the things that could possibly happen that go wrong. And it's like, I want to get it perfect so that I can almost avoid potential pitfalls that haven't happened yet.
Right.
For you?
Yeah. And I think like recently I read a book called Present Over Perfect. Like it's better to be present more than perfect. It's better to be present in this moment, right? Because that's all we really have. And like, why are we worrying about what could happen later so much that it's like taking away from this moment? So yeah, I love that because we are always like 10 steps ahead of like what we're worrying about things that potentially might never even happen, right? And you know what? The thing about perfectionism is, for me, it's like, okay, did you ever see a movie that everything just went perfectly? It's like, no, we never see movies that everything goes perfectly. No, we never read books that everything goes perfectly. No, we never are in relationships where everything goes perfectly. Like the best movies, the best books, the best relationships all have, the tension, the hardships, the messiness, the imperfection, it's like, that's what makes them interesting. And so we don't really want perfection is really like the bottom line. Like, why is it that we think we want that when reality is, I think perfectionists or somebody, not perfectionists themselves, but the idea of perfect is kind of boring, right? Flawless is boring. It's Marilyn Monroe has a quote. I don't know if you've heard it. It's like, imperfection is beauty, she says. Imperfection is beauty. Madness is genius. That's what she says. Madness is genius, and it's better to be absolutely ridiculous than absolutely boring. So I just think about that,
right?
About life, right? Like life, a perfect life. Like who has that, by the way? Like no one. We all kind of like strive for it, or we want to appear that we have that, right? We aim for that. And so it's like we waste so much time and unnecessary energy by, trying to make it happen. It's just like we worry about those things that may never even occur. And so, yeah. And we look at like, and I think like looking at all the, like the small, like the details, of like, I know when I'm writing my blog or something and I want to have it go out there perfectly without any mistakes or whatever, all that time that I waste on things that no one's really going to notice. And I'm so obsessing about it and I'm wasting so much time, it's like, it's just it's a time killer too. Just like trying to attain something.
Well, you make a good point. It is a time suck. And I can certainly say for all of like the worrying, remunerating, thinking 8 steps ahead, stressing out, that trying to get it perfect, that made it no bit more worthwhile than the times that it was on the fly and going. Because it's interesting. I run the extremes because I either want to get it perfect and I'll, go over the minutia of all the detail. Or on the other side, I'm like, let's roll with it. We're going to be fine. Let's do this. But like the spontaneity. And the interesting part is to you and Marilyn Monroe's point, it always like seems to work out. And in the times that I'm like less stressed and just rolling with it, it's almost even more beautiful because it comes out the way that it comes out.
Right. More authentic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, is like the authentic excellence, like instead of striving for perfection, striving like instead, because there's nothing wrong with wanting to do well. There's nothing wrong with wanting to put amazing work out into the world. I mean, your audience is, ambitious, driven women, right? So like we all want to do well, right? So there's like absolutely nothing wrong with that. But instead we can shift the language or the thought from, okay, I have to do this perfectly, to let me strive to do it, authentically excellent. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference there. Like we can strive for excellence. And I feel like that comes from a different energy than striving for perfection. I feel like striving for perfection, there's so much self-doubt behind that and so much fear. And, I think people who are perfectionists tend to be scared of what other people will think about them. So that's where I think the difference is. I think I think perfect is just an illusion. It's just like a construct that we've kind of made up. There's no such thing really. Like in whose mind are we perfect anyway? Right?
Right. And I think that a lot of times we do that out of a place of seeking safety, right? Or again, to use the word so beautifully, like the illusion of safety, the illusion of perfection, the illusion that we have it all figured out, the illusion that, that somehow, some way we have control. And the truth is, we don't have control. We don't have control. What we do have control over is ourselves. We have control over how we react, how we respond, the choices that we make. Frankly, we even have control over our beliefs and our mindset and our head noise, right? We can see it and recognize it and do something about changing it. But I'm not in control of anyone else. I'm not in control of the outcome necessarily. I'm not in control of the universe. It's a hard one for me to like take that one on. I'm like, really? Because I was hoping I could be the boss of the universe.
Right. So I think like one of the characteristics of a perfectionist is that wanting to control everything, right?
Yeah.
Instead of allowing and just letting it be and being our authentic self in whatever we're doing, because we are where we are now and we're exactly where we're supposed to be.
Right. What allows us to, because I think that's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote, like, trust that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Like, what allows us to be in that trust? Because I think that trust, not to mention like the curiosity and spontaneity, but like if there was a medicine, right, the antidote for getting stuck in the rut of perfection, I think that in many ways it would be self-acceptance, but self-acceptance doesn't like magically appear like, like Oprah, you get self-acceptance. Like, no, it's something that we have to cultivate. But Jen, how do we cultivate self-acceptance? How do we cultivate like trusting that we're where we're meant to be instead of like, am I doing it right? Like,
well, this is the thing. I think the real cause of a lot of people's feeling that they have to be perfect is it comes from a lot of places. One of the first ones I want to bring up though is the social media thing because I know it's getting blamed for a lot of things these days, right? But when we look at Instagram, when we look at Facebook, and we see people who appear to be living such amazing and extraordinary lives, because most people don't put their crap on their social media, right? Most people don't advertise that they just had a fight with their spouse, or that their dog just threw up on their comforter, or that their kids are having a tantrum. Like, that's just not something that people put out there. So we look at these images of like that beautiful blonde doing a perfectly balanced headstand on a paddleboard in Bali, you know, and we're like, wait, where did I miss the sign up sheet for this girl's life, you know? And so I think a lot of it comes from comparing ourselves to others. And that's where, like, we have to understand that those images on those platforms are just people's just moments, right? It doesn't mean that they don't experience the 50-50 of life. The 50-50 of life is 50% of our life is going to be positive, and 50% of our life is going to be negative. No matter who you are, I don't care who you are. So I think this getting rid of that self-doubt, it involves realizing that we're not, you know, supposed to be happy all of the time. We're not supposed to be positive all the time. We're not going to always have that, you know, those good moments, but we look at other people and everybody else seems to be having this. So I think that that's the self-doubt that comes in, sneaks in, because we mistakenly believe that if we're not happy, that something's gone wrong, you know. And my
Right.
dog
You make such a good point though, Jen. I think that part of the path to self-acceptance is understanding that it's not going to be perfect or happy or figured out. Like, part of appreciating the light and the freedom and the connection and the ease and the peace and the joy is because we've experienced the contrast. Right?
Yeah.
And it's, to me, I think about like playing all the keys on the keyboard, right? We might have favorite keys. We might have favorite emotions. I know I do. Love being happy. Really love it. Like, I love all those happy keys. But we have all those different notes on the piano, just like we have different, you know, colors in a tapestry, so that we can feel the full range of our emotions. We have the full connection to our identity and who we are, that we are multidimensional people. And I think that the sooner that, like, we come into a place of acceptance, or at least I know for me, when I accept, like, I'm doing the best that I can, and I don't have to get it right, but even the parts that hurt or challenging, like, there's a lesson in there. There's something for me to learn. When I'm triggered or frustrated, or I react and then I look back and I'm like, oh, shouldn't have said it that way or done it that way. Like, it's an opportunity for me to learn. And from that learning, like, the next chapter gets better, or the next chapter feels more connected or clear. Do you find that that's true for you? Like,
absolutely. And I love the imagery of the piano and the keys. That's such a great image. Yeah, because it's true. It's like we are multifaceted people. Like, we have so many different emotions for a reason. Like, we're not supposed to just have positive emotions. And I think when we think that, that's when we are, you know, start to doubt, and we start to get into that, like, okay, and we start to compare ourselves and our lives to other people's lives. And we think that we might be doing something wrong. But the truth is that we're all vulnerable. Even that beautiful blonde that's doing that perfectly balanced headstand on that paddleboard in Bali has problems. She has things that she's navigating through. Her life isn't perfect either, and neither is ours, and that's okay. Like, that's part of the full range. You know, it's like we're humans on the planet, and this is what the definition of being a human being is. It's not being only like happy and on the positive side. It's everything. And once we realize that, I think that a lot of the self-doubt goes away, because we're like, okay, if we all have this all of the time, like, okay, then I'm completely normal. And I think that that's like a really important part of being more comfortable with who you are, and understanding that, you know, we're all on this journey of life. It doesn't come easy to anyone, and we all just do the best that we can. And yeah. And I think, like, also perfectionism, you know, the tendency to be a perfectionist comes from, like, the programming, right? The pre-programming, you know, from, like, our parents. I know for me, my mom was always like, do the best you can, you got this, just be yourself. She always used to tell me, just be yourself, or like that old adage, if at first you don't succeed, try again, like that's what I got from my mom. But from my dad, I got a very different story. Like from my dad, I got, what are you, stupid? Like he honestly like would say things to me like, if I did something wrong, I was like, oh my gosh, if you can't do it right, just don't do it. Right? And so I heard that message over and over again. If you can't do it right, don't even bother. And so I, for one, like I never wanted to try new things because I was afraid. I didn't think I was going to be able to do it right on the first try. Who can do something great on the first try, right? But I used to think if I can't do it right, then I'm not going to try. So it held me back from wanting to try things and from wanting to do, to do different things that I'd never tried before. So, but my new motto is, if you can't do something right, so what? Just learn. You're going to learn so much in the process. Do it anyway. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, you'll learn lessons. Just like you were saying, it's so true. We learn our most valuable lessons by failure, right? By doing it wrong, by not being perfect, by just being where we are now.
Right. Oh, Jen, that resonates with me so much. I mean, and you're 100% right. It's like, it's this past programming that's giving us this like BS story about perfectionism. And you're right. And you give such a great example. Like you can have one person who's cheerleading you, right? And you can have another negative voice, but especially as we're kids and we're developing, we're growing, a lot of times, like one would say like, oh, that the positive voice should like, be louder. But sometimes we hear both. And in many ways, it's like we hear both because we don't want to get it wrong. Even as kids, I mean, and my daughter's in kindergarten right now, and I can watch her watching the other kids to make sure that she's doing it right. And to some extent, it's healthy. Modeling is healthy. Like, oh, she didn't hear what the teacher's direction was. So she's looking around and all the other kids stood up to go get the scissors. So now she's standing up and she's going to get the scissors. So that's good. But I think that just like anything else, too much of that, right? If we don't find that balance point of that moderation, we're looking at everyone around us constantly, giving ourselves a grade of pass or fail. So to your point earlier about the influence of social media or our perception of social media, because, I know from my own experiences, like in life on social media, a lot of times you share the highlight reel. Like I don't share when I get a blister on my foot. Like I'm not taking pictures of that and putting that on, right? But I am taking pictures of a beautiful sunrise. Or I'm taking pictures of like splashing in the water. So it is the highlight reel, but I think that where we get jammed up is when we use everyone else's highlight reel as our barometer of whether or not we're passing or failing in life. And we treat it almost the same as like the kids going to get the scissors, when we didn't hear the cue. And we create this like measurement of like, am I okay? Have I figured it out? Am I doing it good enough? Oh, well, they have better abs than me, or the family picture is better, or they're doing, more vacations than me, or wow, look at that kitchen. Oh God, I'll never, right? All that story. Then we go into compare and despair mode. So I hear what you're saying about like from the perspective of our old programming and going back in the day, but when we play out that stuff now, we have this illusion that everyone else has it figured out. And guess what, everyone who's listening? No one has it figured out. No one.
Amen, sister.
Right?
I know. Yeah. And it holds us back because we think like, we're not ready. We can't do this now. I remember when you asked me to join your LLCT program. So I don't know if you've introduced me as one, but so I was asked to, you had mentioned to me, you said, I think you would be a great coach. And I already had a career. So I was really, comfortable in that. So this was like, I was curious, like, that I was curious. I was like all things Valley, right? But now you're asking to be one of you? I don't think so. Me? I'm not like you. You're amazing. You're awesome. Like, I'm just me. Like, I don't know. I'm just this and I'm just that. And I had all these excuses and I had all this mind drama about not being good enough, not being ready, needing more time, needing to be more. I thought I had to be someone better before I said yes. Okay. Like, I was going to say, like, I'm not ready yet, but maybe in a couple of years I'll get there. Like, I'll be ready then and I'll be more, and it's that perfectionist way. Like, we don't think that we have what it takes now. So we put off so much, in the pursuit of becoming better before we say yes to things. And that's just not how it works.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You're 100% right. So let's talk about some of our favorite tools, because I know, if nothing else, you and I are two very well-resourced ladies who I think that we have the courage, or at least what I've seen demonstrated in you, is you have the courage to uncover. You have the courage to go down a path and say, like, I don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try it. So what would you say are some of your favorite tools for escaping perfectionism, whether it's through self-talk or something else that you're doing, books you're reading? What helps you to stop that cycle of perfectionism and start to really lean into self-acceptance?
Okay. Every morning I do this as part of my morning routine. I wake up, and after I meditate and pray and do some other things, I take out my journal and I write in my journal. I write all the stuff that's in my head. I write it down. I just get it all out of my head, because when you're facing a new day, you might have some worries of things that might come up, of things that you've said yes to, that you're a little bit unsure of. Maybe you don't know if you can actually get the job done or whatever it is. I dump everything out of my head. I get it all out. So that's a really important practice for me, is like the brain download of all that stuff that's in my mind about myself. It's a lot of things that come out. I'm surprised that is even in there. I have a lot of negative self-talk, even after all the work I've done on myself, right? I still have it inside. So I write it down, I get it all out, and then I do my more intentional thoughts, like what I would rather think on purpose. I put that down, and that really helps me to be more deliberate throughout my day. So that if I write on the one side, I suck at everything, or like, I can't do this, or, all the thoughts that actually, like, on a daily basis I have in my head. If I, write down all the things I would rather think on purpose, such as, just I am where I am, and that's fine. That's just fine. That's where I'm supposed to be right now, or whatever the thought that kind of counters the negative thought. I would rather think that on purpose. And then I practice them. I read them over again. I get good at, remembering them throughout my day. And that's a really good way, I think. That's one of the tools I use to counter the negative thoughts that I have in my head about myself and about maybe like my abilities and things like that.
Well, Jen, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that that's such a great tool. A lot of times we think that we shouldn't write down a journal unless it's like magic and rainbows, and it's like, dear diary, I am a rock star, yada yada. And it's like, no, like, we just need to pour that crap out of our head, like, just get it out on paper. And it's funny, because what you're talking about really reminds me of one of our modules in the Own Your Power Mastery program. That's the program Jen coaches. And when we go from like identifying those disempowering beliefs and then rewriting them and creating empowering new beliefs. Because you're right, like, it's okay for us to have head noise and garbage. We want to get it out, but we want to counter it with, like, what do you want to be deliberate, intentional, and discerning about what you want to believe instead. So yeah. Love that practice. Love that practice.
And I think another thing I allow is failure. I just allow it to be an option. And I just read, do you know Pema Chodron? Pema Chodron? Is that her name? Yeah. Pema Chodron has a book. It's called Fail, Fail Again, Fail Better. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
Not yet.
Yeah, no, it's really, it's great because it really does. I think if we open ourselves up to the possibility that whatever it is that we're embarking on, or whatever, we want to do in the world, whenever we put ourselves out there in the world, it's vulnerable. So we want to protect, and we want to do, like you said before, like we want to do it all right. Just being open to the fact that we just might not be able to do it right. We might fail, and that's totally fine too, because like we talked about before, it's all about the lesson. So I think that's another tool I use. I go into something with the option that it's okay that I fail. Because I think when I think that I have to be perfect, that holds me back because I don't want to do that thing. And I get so nervous and so caught up in everything that I don't do it well at all. But when I allow myself to fail, I actually do better because I'm more relaxed. Like, okay, if I fail, like, so what? I think it's allowing emotions too. It's allowing the hard emotions to come up and be okay. Like humiliation doesn't feel great, but you know what? It doesn't kill you either, right? We're not going to die from being embarrassed. We're not going to die from being humiliated. So I think those allowing emotions, like being willing to experience any emotion, when we're open to it all, that's when we relax. We're just like, okay,
Right.
see how this goes, It's like,
here goes nothing.
Yeah. And just like taking that leap.
Right. I love that concept. I hope everyone's like listening, writing it down, putting it in your brain, like allowing emotions, because I remember being in a bad cycle where it's like anything that wasn't happy didn't feel safe, and sadness or anger or frustration, like they would almost like catch me right in my chest. And like, I've almost felt like I couldn't breathe because I wasn't allowing that emotion. Instead, I was creating such a judgment around it and worried that somehow, some way that was going to hurt me or ruin me, or, I'll never experience happiness again. Like we go down all these paths in our head that we don't say out loud, right? Like our Facebook or Instagram pictures don't be like, and then when this picture was being taken, here's the argument I had before that, or here's the crappy thoughts I was having, or like, here's where I stubbed my toe or dropped my toothbrush in the toilet. Like it doesn't say that,
Yeah.
So, I mean, even as you're talking about it, I think about, when I would when I was learning to surf, and I would be so insistent on wanting to get it right. And I know you play music. Did you feel the same way? Like being so insistent on wanting to get it right. And there was such like fluidity that came in when I just said, I don't have to get it right. Like allowing failure, having failure be an option.
Or even just saying, you know what, let me just have fun with this, right? Like surfing should be fun, right? Playing an instrument should be fun. It shouldn't be so so serious, And I found that with music, the same thing would happen to me. I just wanted to play it right. I remember being so upset because I just kept hitting the wrong chords and things like that. I would run out of the room crying my eyes out. I was like, I'm quitting, if I can't. I wanted to be Jimi Hendrix on day one, and that's what a perfectionist wants, right? You want to like be good right out of the gate. And that's just not realistic. It's not life. And I think that the sooner we realize that, and I think the more we allow ourselves the permission to just have failure as an option, or have not doing it well, okay, like that's okay. We're on our way. It's like, there's another thing that I heard recently. It's like imperfect progress. It's like we're making progress. We're going towards the direction of our goal, but we're not going to get there in a day, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. Is that the saying? It takes some time. So you just keep taking the steps to get to that place, and you'll eventually get there. It's just that we just allow that imperfectness to be there along with the progress, setting, these goals along the way that we may or may not reach, but we're going in a direction.
Right. You nailed it. You nailed it, Jen. And I think that's one of the reasons why at least I'm drawn to being of service as a coach, because I think that when you are on that path of saying like, okay, I don't have to get it right, but this is the direction that I'm headed. And whether it's us helping like the team, or we are building up our clients, or even for ourselves. I mean, I coach myself all day long.
Yeah.
Okay, and now you're going to do this, right? But I think that that's one of the beautiful things about showing up in the world, setting your intentions, having your vision, knowing that there might be some detours along the way, but enjoying the journey.
Enjoying it, having fun with, and I would say, like, that you asked about antidotes before. I would say like the 3 antidotes that I have for perfectionism is being the best you that you can be. Just being the best you where you are now is your only requirement in life, right? Just like doing your best. And I know, like, we say that to our children all the time, right? Do your best. We know that, but when it comes to us, it's like, we think we have to be like somebody else. We compare so much. I mean, I remember when I was, talking about coming onto your podcast, and like, I was listening to a podcast and they had a guest expert, and I was literally comparing myself to that person. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm going to have to do. It's like, it's so ridiculous, but yes, we do this to ourselves and it causes so much stress. And so I just know that the best I can do is what I can bring right now, and it's also allowing, this is the second thing, it's allowing for that B- work. I don't know if you've ever heard, when we're kids, right? We want that A, like a lot of us strive for that A, but like allowing just a B- work, allowing it to just be what it is now, and that being enough and okay. So many of us, still striving for the A++ with the stars, next to our name. We want that, but it's just like being okay with it. So yeah. And I would say like the last thing, which I said before, is authentic excellence. So like, there's nothing wrong with striving to be better and more than, we are now, because of course, like, we all are evolving, we're all growing, and we don't want to say like, don't go for it. We want our listeners, like, go for your dreams, go for the gusto, but realize that excellence is about doing your best, and perfectionism is like, it's just hard to define and it's really hard to attain. So just do your best. And I believe that just showing up can be really like the best thing, right? Just showing up is brave, it's amazing. Just show up, just do the thing, just do it. Just like take that leap and do the thing, because even if you do it wrong, it's okay. Like, we talked about like a million times, you're going to learn from that. And who cares what other people think about you? There's always the critics. There's always the people that are going to not like you. I've had to be coached on this many of times, because I always wanted everybody to like me, everybody to think I was great. And there's always the critics. There's always the people that are not going to like your work, whatever you're putting into the world. And I love that quote by Theodore Roosevelt, "The man in the arena." I'm sure you're familiar with that, and probably many of your listeners are. It's daring greatly. It's doing the thing that really matters.
Right? It's not the critic who counts. And that's our inner critic as well as the outside critics.
Right.
Beautiful, Jen. I love jamming with you. Now you guys can all see why Jen is a very important part of our Mindrise team. She is such a rock star. Love your perspective. I also love your willingness to be authentic and real and put yourself out there, because you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. No one listening is perfect. And guess what, guys? We are all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think my word for 2021 I picked was perseverance. And I think that is such a perfect word in the what we're talking about today. It's like just persevering, imperfect progress, like we talked about, and going forward and just making that progress along the way. And I really feel like it's not necessarily about the goal all the time. It's about who we become in the pursuit of that goal. That's what really is going to, like, we can actually fail our way to a bigger life. It's like, we can be so much more than we are today if we just are willing to do the thing. And perfectionists don't want to do that. And that's a shame. Like, we should all just be authentically who we are and, see how it goes. I mean, especially when we have a calling, right?
Yes.
When we're being called to do something, we have to go for it.
Right. I can just see how it goes, see how it all turns out. This script isn't written.
Yeah.
Well, here's to being a recovering perfectionist, working on it every day. Again, thank you so much, Jen, for joining us today. And guys, stay tuned for future episodes with Jen, giving us her perspective and just sharing with us what it means to rise in your life. Thanks again.